actually finished like a project in Moscow, and I was like not particularly happy about going back to Eastern Europe. But when I arrived in Vilnius, the first and second time, I realized that this place is totally different. Nice parks and people, enjoying life in their families, just like in Denmark, So that was a very good introduction. Lithuanian architects and officers here that has been educated in Denmark, and there's a lot of people that go out, work 2 or 3 years in Holland, in Denmark, in England or whatever, coming back to Lithuania with new approaches, and that certainly is reflected also in the approach toward architecture here, I think.
The old town on the
I think the urban hill is actually amazing, and I think it is actually from Soviet time.
Yeah.
I think that is a really good thing, that they decided to have this cluster of high-rise buildings in one place and along Constitution. And I think that is really good. That's something that works.
Yeah.
Where in Copenhagen we have a crazy one because they're scattering them all over the place now for whatever reason, because we have towers in Copenhagen, but I'm not sure this is the right one.
Sveiki, Structum tinklalaidės DnA plus žiūrovai. Šiandien esame Konstitucijos prospekte, verslo centre K29. Pas mus jau tiesiai iš oro uosto skuba vienas iš šio pastato projekto autorių, danų architektų biuro PLH ARKITEKTER, vienas iš vadovų, Steen Enrico Andersen. Kartu su juo pasidarysime po šį gražuolį ir pakalbėsime apie tai, kaip jis atsirado ir kaip jis atrodo šiandien. Šis išskirtinis elipsės formos pastatas ne tik turi vieną didžiausių ir įspūdingiausių atriumų visoje Lietuvoje, o taip pat ir Baltijos šalyse. Jis yra ir išskirtinai taupus bei ekonomiškas, turi A+ klasę. Kaip pavyko visą tai įgyvendinti, mums papasakos iš Danijos atvykęs jo architektas. Jis taip pat papasakos ir apie naujus savo projektus Lietuvoje. Okay, Mr. Andersen, thank you for seeing us today. And I know you just came straight from the airport. I imagine it's not your first time. How many times you've been in Vilnius? And
I think that's pretty, thank you. That's pretty countless, because I came here the first time in 2003.
Okay, it's long ago.
Quite, meeting a new country, a new culture, and we had actually finished like a project in Moscow, and I was like not particularly happy about going back to Eastern Europe. But when I arrived in Vilnius, the first and second time, I realized that this place is totally different. Nice parks and people, enjoying life in their families, just like in Denmark, So that was a very good introduction we had from SBR. That was our first client here.
Yeah.
And since then, there's been long periods where I've been here 3 times a month. So you can add that up all those years,
All right, okay. So you can afford to travel like...
People in the office call this my second home, so...
Okay. One of the more or less prominent buildings that you've done in Lithuania is, of course, this, and we'll talk about it a bit later. But you already said something about the architecture of Vilnius, and I wonder what is your general impression. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Yeah. I mean, when I first came here, the architectural community was very much a lot of architects, my age, they were all educated in Soviet time, and the environment was very different from today, where you have a lot of young architects now coming out, with different approaches to architecture. So we felt that there was a lot we could bring in from Denmark, where we have a pretty big culture for architecture. What I've seen over the years is now there's a lot more quality in architecture here than when I first came.
Why do you think that is? What makes the quality of architecture go up? Maybe input from the people like you who have been coming.
I think, yeah, of course that, there were a lot of, architects at that time. They were all looking at magazines, everybody wanted glass buildings, everything we had in the West, that was the transition period.
Yeah.
And I think that what was really important was that they started also, I think now, started understanding architecture at a different level, because this has to do with like also Vilniaus Technical University, and where it's been educated, the professors are like, you know, people maybe educated in a different time, so all that was kind of like, but I think it's like different now. The environment is different, and now also what I see, like you know, we have Lithuanian architects in our office. I also know that there are Lithuanian architects in offices here that has been educated in Denmark, and there's a lot of people that go out, you know, work 2 or 3 years in Holland, in Denmark, in, you know, England or whatever, coming back to Lithuania with new approaches, and that certainly is reflected also in the approach toward architecture here, I think. This building was a result of a competition, an invited competition, and also it's a very difficult site. There's good reason for this public arcade here. There was actually a district heating pipe that was going through that we couldn't cover. And then actually they did remove it, but they decided that, you know, the clients thought it would be great to have this public arcade going through here, eventually connecting over to the Panorama Shopping Center.
Yeah, and I know that it's been 8 years since this building was put into use, and you've been probably visiting it ever since. How do you feel this whole complex? How it works now? And do you get maybe complaints or compliments about it?
No, I mean, I you know, first of all, I would say that you come here and you can see that they're taking good care of it, because that's something too, you know, like having a good building management that is actually taking care of the building. And I also think that the tenants in there is very keen on having a nice, presentable building. I mean, you have really like high quality companies in this building. So there's no doubt that part is also important. But at the same time, I come back here, you know, I feel really good going into the atrium, and yeah, I feel this building is aging well.
This composition of this building is particularly interesting, and also in Lithuanian context, we don't have many or at all buildings that are like have this oval shape with that huge atrium, and also it has quite interesting location next to big crossing.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the reasons, because it's actually, when we started this, you know, this is actually kind of the end of the urban hill.
Yeah.
And you know, the urban hill is like the high rise is stepping down slowly towards this side.
Yeah.
But then this is kind of also like the end of the urban hill with all this infrastructure and roundabouts out here. So we kind of thought that's soft shape would be like very iconic having here, and we're not like relating to any building like close to you.
Okay, we are now inside this magnificent atrium of the building, and this unusual shape of oval or egg shape, I don't know what it is in fact, it's very obvious here. And you mentioned that the upkeeping of the building has been quite good, and also we see a lot of iconic Scandinavian furniture around us. Were there any difficulties implementing such a shape or selling it, so to say, to the client?
No, I think that that was pretty clear, but it was we had already had this shape in the winning competition proposal, and I think the client was quite keen on, also because it's very iconic. And it's even because, you know, besides the oval shape, we also have a sloped roof. There's 11 degrees, you know, what makes the building even more dramatic from a distance.
Yeah.
But what was really interesting about this was that these buildings that we have done in Denmark, you know, with atriums very active for like the tenants in the building.
Yeah. Mm.
The thing here was that, you know, this became like a space, but this space, we have photos of the space being used for all different kinds of things.
Yeah.
Politicians, concerts, classical concerts, rock concerts, exhibitions, students promoting their work, you know, all kinds of stuff is going on here, and it became a new destination. It became a destination you could go to in Vilnius, you know, and that was very pleasing for us to see.
Yeah, so more people know about it, more people can recognize it from the pictures, from the videos, from their
and you can enter from the street, you can go and buy a coffee and sit here, and if you need, between two meetings, you can go in here and make a phone call, sit here, and it's, semi-public space.
Yeah, you've mentioned that it is quite popular concept in Scandinavia, and it's also gaining traction in Lithuania also. It's very interesting.
But in Scandinavia, for many reasons, is that companies are really, their organizations are calling for like very dense buildings with easy access and views, and the atrium space is for the big, jamboree where everybody gets together and have informal meetings, have workshops, and this. So it's the concept-wise is like it started like around 2001, 2003. We did the first ones.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But this one is interesting because it's such a like semi-public space for Vilnius, and everybody knows this building, And
yeah, definitely. What is your personal opinion about this visual protection zone? We have the urban hill, so to say, one side of the river, and the old town on the other side.
I think the urban hill is actually amazing, and I think it's a very, this is actually from Soviet time. Yeah. And I think that is a really good thing that they decided to have this cluster of high-rise buildings in one place and along Constitutions, and I think that is really good. That's something that works.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where in Copenhagen we have a crazy one because they're scattering them all over the place now for whatever reason, because we have towers in Copenhagen, but I'm not sure this is the right one. I think the urban hill is very successful in that sense.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And also the visual protection zone, when you see from across the old town, and you see the old town and also all these new buildings, including this one sometimes. And some people say that it's kind of ruining the panoramas because the red tiled roofs are on the first plan, and those are glass buildings on another.
But that, this is one of my comments too, that, when you build in our century a new building, we shouldn't, because of you have buildings with red tile roofs, there's old, it shouldn't be that we have to build in the same architecture, the same style. In Copenhagen we also have an old town. A lot of beautiful old buildings, but I mean, new buildings are in contrasted. As you can see, this is a new building, but it's in balance with the old building. It doesn't look like the old building, but they're complementing each other.
Yeah, so it's not denying or contrasting too much.
I think if you go to Tallinn, is probably the place in the Baltic countries that they're most advanced in that thing, because they do crazy stuff up there that you would never be able to do in Vilnius. Yeah. And Riga is probably in between, and Vilnius is like very, very strict, but it's, in my opinion, you build in our century, we build architecture that looks like it's from our time, not like it was built 200 years ago.
When did you start your career, and how did it all started?
Well, my career, of course, that started after I graduated from the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Art as an architect, and that's many years ago. But I was actually very interested in high-rise buildings at the time. I'm still am. My master degree was based on a project in Manhattan in New York. And after I graduated, I actually went to New York and worked for Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, SOM, for some years, doing high-rise buildings and working on high-rise buildings in the States and also in Kuwait. So, I mean, that was like kind of like the beginning of my career. And then I came back to Denmark some years later, and we were four guys that knew each other from school, and we formed PLH. There's today like 160 people in the office.
Okay, we are now standing in a place with the most magnificent view of the building, and we're seeing all this glass and open construction of elevators and also glass ceiling. Can you tell us a bit more about the choice of materials that you had?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we wanted openness in the building, but regarding materials, we took like the Scandinavian approach and having like natural materials, timber, and the cores are cladded in this oak veneer, and the frontage of balconies here is also timber tinted with this light to contrast it, and we have timber floors, and but openness was like a really big element, and we wanted that. And you can also see that people are also using the outside of the floors for little meetings, and we have like natural stone floor.
We know that Scandinavian architecture, which you are representing, obviously is very much focused on natural materials and natural light and so on.
Natural materials and natural light, and it all creates like a, creates like a nice indoor climate. What was also important. People are really, people do better work when there's a good indoor climate, and this was actually a hybrid of natural and cooling in the building. So we worked with all this with the engineers, and well-being is something that companies are really looking for today. I mean, well-being for their employees, they know that is going to show on their bottom line as well.
Yeah.
And over the years in Vilnius, you had like a transition of a lot of companies moving from these buildings from Soviet time, into these modern buildings.
Yeah.
And looking for more and more advanced systems and in their buildings. So I mean, and this is certainly what we call like a Class A plus building. It's the top of the line.
Yeah.
There's different classifications, and that also reflected on the rent. But this building is definitely on the very top.